Hello everyone. I've had a good rest. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm still whacked, but I'm going to try again. Chapter 44 of The Treasure Hunter's Tale. Freddie jumped up, which made the old lady jump too. Sorry, said Freddie. Please go on, he said, his breathing getting quicker. He tried to control it, but the thoughts were whizzing through his head. Were they the same pirates? They couldn't be. The pirates on his boat were young, louty men, but maybe the same ship? The old lady was speaking again. Yes, young man, pirates of a truly swashbuckling kind. My father was a wealthy man, and so he was targeted by these pirates, and I was kidnapped at the same time. I was hauled off to their ship, but thankfully the king looked after me, and instead of being sent to be forced to be the captain's lady, I was hurried down into the galley. Freddie was getting excited. I think maybe they saw my armour and thought I'd be more useful in the kitchen than up on deck. She laughed and patted her well-worn armour. Yes, I have much to be grateful for. She looked at Freddie, for she had noticed his breathing getting quicker. So anyway, dear, she said, life was very challenging, but I soon got my sea legs. Oh, we sailed to many a port, but I was never allowed off the ship. For a time I thought that the officer had forgotten me and lost hope of being rescued. How long were you on the ship for? Asked Freddie, trying to keep his voice calm. Well, let me see, said the lady. I know this sounds odd, dearie, but when you are below deck a lot, you sort of lose track of time. She looked at her hands. Let's just say it was long enough that my hands had started seizing up as they are now. Freddie gasped. Goodness, he said sadly. So you were there for ages? Yes, dear, the lady said. But after a good year on board, I decided it was no good waiting to be rescued, as after many months I thought that would never happen, and so I mustered my courage and started to take my work seriously. She held the carved Bible verse that Freddie had handed her, and her old, gnarled fingers stroked it lovingly. So anyway, once I had made my resolve to trust the king, whether I was rescued or not, I carved a coded version of this verse on my bunk to remind me of his goodness and faithfulness. Freddie jumped to his feet. Then I know the name of the ship, he cried. The ship that was your prison and mine. The lady looked surprised. Sorry, I must explain, said Freddie, sitting back down. I was also on the Maiden's Crosswind, as a cabin boy. Now it was the old lady's turn to gasp. Well, I never, she said. Oh, you poor boy. But they can't have been the same pirates, she said. No, indeed, said Freddie, for when I was on board, we barely ever sailed out to sea. I think my lot were more scoundrels than pirates, he said emphatically. So you never even got to enjoy seeing distant lands, said the lady. Oh, you poor boy. For I would say that was the one highlight of being on board that magnificent ship, was getting to see the sun-drenched beaches and palm leaves, although of course I never got to go ashore. Freddie had to hide a smile when the lady called the Maiden's Crosswind magnificent. I wish I had seen the ship in its prime, said Freddie, for you make her sound quite something. Oh, she was, said the lady, although of course at the time I just saw her as my prison. She sighed. Isn't it funny how we view our trials once we come through them, she said, and then she turned to Freddie. So you saw my little coded message, did you? She asked, smiling with pleasure. Yes, said Freddie, and it gave Mother and I such encouragement. Oh, your mother was there too, said the lady. That must have been nice at least. Well, said Freddie, I met her on board. She, like you, was kidnapped and put down in the galley because of her armour. The lady patted her armour lovingly. Yes, these gifts from the king have kept us through so much, she said with great gratitude. Anyway, said Freddie, she adopted me right away and she taught me about the king. How lovely, said the lady. And how did you come to be here then? She asked. Well, one day the men left the door to the galley unlocked and so we made good our escape. But first, Mother and I carved our own coded message that it might be an encouragement to future galley prisoners. I'm sure it will be, dear, said the lady, patting Freddie's knee again. And you? Freddie asked. How did you escape? For the pirates from your days on board sound like they were serious swashbucklers. Oh, they were, said the lady. But these old hands saved me in that they became too useless to work in the kitchen, and so one day they just threw me out, and I made my way home. It was so unusual walking on land again that it took me some time to make any progress, but the officer helped me as he met me offshore, and he it was that brought me home. "Well," said Freddie, "if you don't mind, I would love to introduce you to Mother. I'm sure you and she have many stories to share." "I would love that," said the old lady, "for I have no family of my own." Freddie put his arm around her. "Then you must become part of ours," he said, "for my dear grandmother is no longer with us, and we are in desperate need of another," he said, smiling. The lady smiled back. "Thank you, dear," she said, holding out her hand. "I'm Miss Wait-on-the-Lord, by the way." Freddie introduced himself with the name he had been given at the Hill of Salvation all those years ago, the which we have not learned yet, as we have only known him as Freddie. "I'm Mr. Freely Justified," he said, shaking her hand. "But you can call me Freddie," he said. "Everyone else does." "Thank you, Freddie," said Miss Wait-on-the-Lord. "And now, if you will wrap up my shopping, we shall go and see your mother at once." She fumbled for her purse again, but Freddie put up his hand. "Please, accept this as a gift," he said, "to say thank you for the verse on the cabin bed from all those years ago." The old lady shed a little sparkling tear. "I always prayed that that verse would help others," she said, "and now to hear that it did and get to actually meet you. Oh, I am truly blessed." Freddie closed the shop as by this time it was getting dusk, and he slipped his arm into the old lady's and took her back to his home. Mrs. Beloved of the King was surprised to see Freddie walking slowly up the garden path with an old lady on his arm, and she rushed outside to make sure the lady wasn't hurt, so bent over was she. But Freddie quickly explained everything in the old way he used to, for though he was now a man, he had not lost that youthful excitement he used to display, and so blurted everything out in one long sentence. But his mother, who was used to his way of talking, got every word. "Well then, Miss Wait-on-the-Lord," said Mrs. Beloved of the King, "do come in and rest a while, for we will have much to discuss once you have caught your breath." Miss Wait-on-the-Lord smiled. "Thank you, missus," she said, "and I think your Freddie might need to catch his too after that long explanation just now." Freddie smiled at her ruefully and then went to get some spare slippers for the lady. "You've got a good one there, my dear," smiled Miss Wait-on-the-Lord. "A good one there, and no mistake." "Thank you," smiled Mrs. Beloved of the King. "We think so too," she said, pouring a nice cup of tea. "And now," she said, sitting down next to the woman, "do tell of your experiences, please." The old lady was still talking when Hope and Iron came in from their children's Bible time that Mr. Newhart and the Smith ran in the evenings once a week. As soon as Miss Wait-on-the-Lord saw Iron, she immediately guessed that here was another member of the family who had been adopted by the couple, and her heart glowed for them. She bundled Iron up into her arms and gave him a kiss when he told her about his new armour, and she gave Hope such a lovely welcoming smile that Hope immediately adopted her as her new grandmother. That evening, as Miss Wait-on-the-Lord struggled into her bed, she thanked the King for his kindness and provision, for looking after her for all her life, and especially her time on the ship, and for her new family, for she had always wanted a family, and now, by some miracle, she had one. "God is good all the time," she said happily, as she settled down to sleep.